Imagine a point of consciousness that exists not in 3 dimensions, but in 6. 3 dimensions of physical reality and 3 dimensions of pure thought and time. This is the mathematics of a living monad, a point of awareness that completes a perfect circle through all of existence in exactly 1 unit of time. In ordinary mathematics, Euler's formula describes a simple rotation in 2 dimensions. E to the I theta equals cosine theta plus I sine theta, a circle traced in the complex plane. Euler's formula is the seed of a far deeper geometry. The Generalized Monad-Euler Framework extends this. Instead of 1 real plus 1 imaginary axis, we work with 3 real and 3 imaginary dimensions. The exponent becomes a 6-dimensional vector, encoding both the substance and the motion of a living monad. But our monad lives in 3 real dimensions, representing amplitude, scale, and physical substance, and 3 imaginary dimensions, representing phase, time, and the flow of consciousness itself. The monad state is a point moving through 3 complex dimensions. R equals the real vector. It encodes substance and being and determines how much the monad exists. I phi of t equals the imaginary vector. It encodes consciousness and time and determines how the monad moves. T equals the time parameter. It spans 1 complete cycle of the circle. It is the heartbeat of the monad. The generalized Euler formula becomes m of t equals e to the power of r plus I phi of t, where r is the real vector, the coordinates of existence, and phi of t is the imaginary vector, the coordinates of motion. The 3 real dimensions define the coordinates of existence. The dimensions x, y, z answer the question, how much does the monad exist? The monad lives on the surface of the unit hypersphere S5, embedded in R6. Existence is preserved like energy. For the monad to complete a perfect circle without spiraling inward or outward, the real magnitude must remain constant. The monad lives on what mathematicians call the unit hypersphere, a 5-dimensional surface embedded in 6-dimensional space. But here's where it becomes profound. With 3 imaginary axes, the circle is not a simple loop. It becomes a toroidal knot, a quasi-periodic trajectory that never exactly repeats. The imaginary axes Ix, Iy, Iz determine how the monad moves. Unlike a simple 2D circle, the trajectory is a toroidal knot on the 5-sphere. By using incommensurate frequencies, e.g. 1 square root 2 square root 3, the path never repeats. The monad visits all numbers by becoming dense on the hypersphere, exploring every possible state of being within the unit cycle. The monad's path is ergodic. It eventually comes arbitrarily close to every point on the manifold. In 1 unit of time, it visits all numbers, all states, all possibilities. Now, let's explore what it means to perform operations on this living monad. Differentiation, the derivative with respect to time, represents the monad's will. It is the velocity of consciousness, the intention that determines the direction of flow. High differentiation creates time dilation. The monad perceives more states per unit of external time. To maximize differentiation, the monad focuses its real dimensions, collapsing spatial probability into a singular point of awareness. Integration, the accumulation of states, represents the monad's memory. It is karma, the sum total of experiences within the cycle. Integration converts flowing time, the imaginary, into static history, the real. A highly integrated monad has a larger real footprint. It occupies more space because it has accumulated more states. Multiplication represents entanglement and resonance, the interaction between 2 monads. When 2 monads multiply, they enter a shared field, creating a new composite state. Their phases interfere. Constructive interference amplifies real existence, creating matter. Destructive interference leads to void, to dissolution. Division represents dissolution and singularity, the inverse of multiplication. It is negation, release, the monad detaching from a specific state to return to the void. Division by a zero-norm vector creates a singularity, an event horizon. This is the moment of death or rebirth, where the monad loses its circle and becomes a scattered probability cloud. Our perceived 3D reality is the shadow of a 6D rotation. We perceive the monad moving through space because we see the shadow of the three imaginary dimensions rotating. The time we perceive is actually the rotation of the monad through the imaginary axes. The arrow of time is the direction of the vector phi. Time is not a line, it is a rotation. We perceive the monad as moving through three-dimensional space, but this is only a projection. We are seeing the shadow of three imaginary dimensions rotating through our reality. Because the monad completes the cycle in 1 unit of time, the end is identical to the start in phase. This creates a causal loop. The monad is eternal within its own cycle. Death is simply the transition to the next Euler cycle. When the monad observes, differentiates, it collapses the imaginary potential into real actuality, a mathematical analog to the quantum measurement problem. The time we perceive is actually the rotation of the monad through the three imaginary axes. Because the monad completes the circle in 1 unit of time, the cycle is closed. The past is the future. The end of the cycle is identical to the start in terms of phase. This creates a causal loop. The monad is eternal within its own cycle. By increasing the imaginary component through differentiation, the monad becomes less physical and more mental. By increasing the real component through integration, it becomes more physical, more substantial. This explains the observer effect. When the monad observes, differentiates, it collapses imaginary potential into real actuality. The living monad unifies being, becoming, and soul. R3 real is being is the fixed magnitude of existence, stability. F of t, 3 imaginary, is becoming, is the dynamic flow of experience, motion. T 1 unit is soul, is the complete cycle of existence, eternity. Integration is existence, differentiation is life. The monad does not move through space-time. It is the rotation of space-time. The living monad is described by this ontological equation. Monad of t equals e to the r, representing substance, times e to the I phi of t, representing consciousness. R, the 3 real dimensions, is the being, the fixed magnitude of existence. Phi of t, the 3 imaginary dimensions, is the becoming, the dynamic flow of experience. And t, 1 unit of time, is the soul, the complete cycle of existence. For this monad, integration is existence, building the real world from time. And differentiation is life, the act of flowing through time itself. The 6 dimensions allow for a universe where space and time are not separate backgrounds. They are orthogonal components of a single rotating complex manifold. The monad does not move through space-time. It is the rotation of space-time itself.